So we put if statement. So if file requested is equal to slash companies, so we respond with something like list of companies. Let's say we respond with something like companies, or there are like array of. The point is that for different URLs have we have to respond differently. So if a user requests for slash companies, we return the list of companies is in form of, let's say, a JSON object, right? So here we see that the server has responded with the companies because we have used the URL companies. And if the requested URL is company slash some company slash, let's say, Pakistan State Oil, so we return with the data of that company, for example, something like that. So the point is that, like, for different URLs, we have to handle them differently on the server, right? So you can imagine if there are 300 companies, we have to work with 300 URLs, or we have to introduce variables in the URLs. But if we work with like pure Node.js, it has minimal functionality. So developing a website becomes very difficult if we just like keep handling requests like this, right? So in the else part, if we open the URL slash companies, we get list of all the companies. If we open a specific company, we get like response for that particular company. And if we are not working with the companies, we request for a file, we get that file. You know, we are basically handling multiple requests. You can imagine for like 1,000 different requests, we might have 1,000 if else parts. Can become very difficult to manage such a web server, right? So to handle with different types of URLs, basically Node.js has a library which is called Express. We can use Express for developing the web server. So Express is basically a middleware. This is not the only middleware. Node.js has plenty of middlewares which you can use for different purposes. So what does middleware do? It basically stands between the request and the response cycle, right? So if we use Express, it would be basically called after the request. It would be passed the request object. It can write anything to the it can read from the request object, it can write anything to the response object, and then it can like return that modified response. That modified response is then returned by Node.js, right? So Express is a middleware, and there are many middlewares in Node.js. So working with Express is very simple. So we include the Express module, right? Just like we included other modules. And then once we have this module, we can create an app out of this module. So we can just call this object, right? And it would return basically an Express app. So this would have the server and other things so built into this Express. So now the server functionality is delegated to the Express object. We can start the server by calling the listen function and the port on which we want to listen, right? That's it. So it would basically start the server. But as we have not added any functionality, so it would not do anything, right? So if I just save it and I run it, node monitor node express.js. Okay, as it is not installed, so we have to install it first. So how do we install it? We say npm install express, right? So this would install express to our folder. Now it is running. So if we open localhost, you see this is the default behavior of Express. It says that cannot get slash companies slash PSO. If we write like public slash Islamabad, it says cannot get, although the file is there, but as we are not handling it, so it says that cannot get it. The web server is working. So if we look at the response, we are always getting a 404 response because we are not handling anything in the server, but the Express server is running by itself. Now, if you remember, we had implemented a static server which basically returns all the files which are stored in the public folder. So if we want to implement that kind of static server using Express, it's just one line of code. We say that app.use. Use is kind Express also provides different functionalities, multiple functionalities, right? One of the functionality is the static server. So we just provide like express dot static, right? So it would add static functionality to our web server, and we can provide the current working directory using like process.cwd or underscore dir name. So what this would do, this would behave like a static server. Now, when we save and rerun it, we write public slash islamabad.jpg, we get that functionality, right? So you see that using Express, things become very easily because it is doing the things in the background. If we want to expose the things which are only available in the public folder, so we can require include the path module, and we can say that path dot join the current directory and the public folder. We save it. Now, public slash Islamabad would not be returned, but if we just write Islamabad, so it would be looked into the public folder and it would be returned, right? So you see that how easy it becomes to implement a web server using Express. We have this companies.json data. It is basically an array of some companies listed on the stock exchange, right? So we have an array of companies data. So we have this data and we want to expose it using Node, right? And within Node, we are using Express. So as we would need to read this file, we have to include the file system module. So we include the file system module. App.use basically handles the static data. Before like developing the API, let's see how can we handle different URLs, right? So if you recall, if we were working with Node, pure Node, like without Express, we got the URL using request.url, right? And then depending upon what was given in that URL, we responded differently. So when we are using Express, we can use app.get, put, post, delete methods to respond accordingly. So for example, if we say app.get, so it would handle the get request, right? Which get request? So for example, what happens if the user just open the main website and does not add anything to the URL, just like opening localhost. That's it, right? The main website. So we say that when the user sends a request for get, as we know that these calls are asynchronous, so we have to provide a callback function. The callback function would have a request response objects as in Node.js. And then what should we do when the user requests for the main directory, right? So we just like we did in Node.js, we can respond with like with the list of companies. So we can say that response dot write 200, or we can response dot write companies, right? So I'm just keeping it simple just for demonstration. Now, when we would open the main website, it would be matched against this root, right? And we would respond with companies. So we just write enter. So we have to. So we get the response companies, right? And then for let's say a specific company slash companies slash PSO, let's say we say that this URL would work for a specific company. This URL would be handled by this function. This URL would be handled by this function. Now this code is much cleaner than the if else code we had used in the core node.js. So now we just save it. And if you open the URL companies slash PSO, we get the response of a specific company. Now, of course, we would replace this functionality when the user opens the root URL. We would return with the JSON object having all the companies, which is in companies.json. So basically we will read this thing and return it as JSON response. So let's do it. So when the user requests for the root, we return all the companies, right? So how do we do that? Of course, we would have to open the file, right? And then return that file to the client side. So we would do the similar things as we did in Node.js for reading the file. in this thing, we would need to open the file. So we store the company's information in companies. We can make it a global variable as well if we want to use it in other functions as well. And we have multiple options. So one way is to read the file when we have a request, but this would make our website inefficient because we would be loading the company's data for every request. Instead, what we can do, we can load the company's data as soon as the script runs, store the companies in a variable and use that variable. Open the file. So we just call the read file function. If you recall read file function, we have to give the path. So the path is public slash companies dot JS. So this is the path. And then when the file is read, so we give the callback function. It has two parameters, error and data. So if there is some error, we receive the data. Now, as this data is read as a text file, we have to convert it into JSON. So we say that companies is equal to JSON dot parse data, right? So JSON.parse would convert this string data into JSON object. So now we will have a companies variable. What can we do to make sure that when the server start, we have read the company's file? Start listening once we have read the file. So we can say that once the file is read, we can start listening to it, right? We can start app.listen here. So in this way, the things can work in parallel, right? So these functions would be executed in parallel asynchronously. This function would be executed asynchronously. Only if we read the file, we start the server, we start listening to the requests from the client side, right? So in this way, we can make sure that app.listen function only starts when we have completely read the data file. So we just started, and now, so we didn't do anything yet, right? So here we can say, we can assume that the companies is read. We can try it here. So we can say console.log companies. So it should be JSON. So we start the server once the file is completely read. What we wanted to have is that once the user opens the main website, we should return all the companies. So in this case, we are not doing anything. So we would not return anything. Um, if user open the main website, we return all the companies. So all the companies are stored in JSON. So we can just say response dot. We can respond with like response dot write. And if we are returning specifically JSON data, we can respond with response.json and write the company's data there, right? So when we save this thing and reloaded browser, you see that it has dealt it with as a JSON file. We can look into the response headers, and the response headers has content type application slash JSON. That means Express has added this content type because of using the function, using this response.json function, right? So this JSON has basically converted this JSON file into text and also added application slash JSON to the response header, right? So in this way, we have like kind of started to implement our API in which when we just open the main website, we get list of all the companies and we receive them as JSON. So the browser knows that this is a JSON response because we have used response.json. And you also have noticed that when we are using response.json, it has automatically sent the it has automatically ended the response as well. So we do not need to end the response explicitly if we are using the JSON function. We can extend this API and add other URLs. So for example, we say that if the request is something like that, companies slash PSO. Now, PSO is like one of the companies, but actually we might have like hundreds of companies, right? So instead of writing 100 URLs, we can use a variable. So a variable in a URL can be used using colon and then whatever variable you want to use. So as it is the symbol of a company, sorry. a company in a stock exchange, we use the variable symbol. So now this whatever is written after slash companies, it goes to this variable symbol. So if we write slash companies slash PSO, so this PSO goes to the variable symbol. If we write ABC, ABC goes to the variable symbol, right? So we make this thing, this URL a variable. Now it can handle hundreds of different URLs using this variable. So whatever is written after slash companies would go to this variable. As we already have the data in companies variable, what we can do to get the data for a specific company. First, we need to extract this symbol from the URL, right? So if we get this URL like this, we can extract the symbol. Of course, this can be like any variable and we can change the variable name to whatever we want. We can access the parameters using request.params object. And within params, this we want to access this variable symbol, right? So dot symbol would access whatever is written. And of course, this would be a string, right? So we access it. What we want to do is we want to search this particular symbol in the array of companies. So companies as a JSON object is an array, right? So you can see that this is an array. So we use the find function. And if you recall, what does the find function do? It basically receives an object. So let's say it's a company. This is received as an object. So in the first iteration, it would be Pakistan State Oil. In second iteration, it would be Angro Fertilizer. So we can say that C dot symbol is equal to symbol, the variable that we have here, right? So the first match, whatever is like written in the first match would be returned. So if it's PSO, we would get the first object. If it's effort, we would get the second object, and so on. So we get this thing and find returns an object. So we can say that company is equal to companies.find. So we get that object. And we just want to respond this company. So we just say response.json and company, right? So in this way, we can get the the record or data for a specific company. So we just save it. You see that when we write slash PSO, so we get the data for Pakistan State Oil, right? And when we write, so whatever that, what else data we have, effort, we get data for effort. If we give a company which is not like present in our JSON file, we just get an empty record, right? Find is null. We can respond with 404 or something like that, company not found, that kind of thing. If we want to search a company by name, right? So all the companies which have something like G in their name, so we can have another URL. By the way, these URL handles, these are called routes, right? So these are called routes. So we are handling the root route, then the symbols route, and then we can handle the, let's say, names route. We say that if the user enters the URL slash name slash whatever he wants to search, part of the name, so slash, we search all the companies which have G in their name, right? And so in that case, what function should we use instead of find? We want to match all the things which are like, which contains this part, right? So uh, let's call it like sub name or substring or something like that. So now we do not want exact match, rather we want a substring matching, right? So for that case, we can have like many functions. We can use regular expressions. We can use the includes function, which works with a string. So we say that c dot name dot includes this sub name, right? So if the name of the company includes this subname partially, we get it, right? So and we return it. So now, as we have written capital G, so we get the company which has like Gandhara. If we write, I don't know, E, so we get Pakistan State Oil. It has E, small e. Then we get Angro Fertilizer. It has small e. and Gandhara Industries, it has small e, right? So now we are basically kind of doing a search based on the substring in the name. Of course, we can improve it. So for example, we can convert this name to lowercase, right? So we convert the string to lowercase, and we can also convert the search to lowercase, right? So in this case, the case would not matter. So if we type en, so if we even if we enter in like capital case or small case, it would be matched, right? So we convert the this URL and also the name in the object to lowercase. So far we have like used get, but in REST we use get for like getting the data, but we can also use, for example, post or put or delete. For example, post for creating new data, put for updating existing data, and delete for deleting the data, right? So now let's say we add a new route. Instead of like getting the data, we say that we want to add new companies, and we will get the data from the server. So we can from the client, right? So we can listen to a request to slash companies, right? Now we are uh, listening the request to slash companies URL, and what request we are listening? The post request. And what post request would do, it would basically whatever it receives, it would add it to the company's object. So in the get case, the request only contains this kind of information. So if we look at this thing, the request headers contain this accept encoding and these things. But when we have a form and user submits this form using post method, then the data is retrieved on the server side using the request object, but URL encoded form URL encoded data is in the body of the request, right? So we have to do something extra about it. For like easily handling this thing, we can have a request parser. So we install a request parser module, right? So what it would help us in parsing the data submitted through the form, and then we just include it. So we say that const body parser is equal to require body parser, right? So we are including this module, right? And then we tell the Express app to use this body parser dot JSON, right? Uh, just to add the functionality. And then we can also tell it that this body parser dot URL encoded. And then within this thing, we can say that extended colon true, right? So why did we use these things? So we added these three statements to handle the post request containing URL encoded data in the body of the request, right? So what would happen, but when the client would click the submit button, the form data would be URL encoded and passed on to the server, right? And if we use the method is equal to post in the form, it would received by the app.post route, right? So within app.post route, what do? We need to fetch whatever the user has submitted. So as we have used the body parser middleware, so you see that Express is using body parser and within that JSON. So we can, if we have done this thing, we can get the data simply by request.body. So let's see console.log request.body, right? So, but to send data uh, to this thing, so we cannot send the data using the URL. So we can not like if we open something using the browser address bar, it would be sent using the get method, right? So for post method, sending the data using post method, either we can use some tool like Postman. So Postman is a tool, we can use it, or we can create a simple form. So in the public, let's say we create a form add.html, right? And within add.html, we create a simple form. We set the method is equal to post, and action would be the script which would handle this request. So that script is companies, right? So if you recall, we are listening post request on the company's URL, right? So this request would be submit when the form would be submitted, the data set would be sent to the slash companies script, right? Within this thing, we can have the name. Of course, we should use label here, name, and so the name of the company, symbol of the company. So first we get the symbol, then we get the name, and then we have the submit button, right? So we should display the submit button. Now we open this form using just add.html as it is in public folder, so it should be displayed here. So we just delete this value part. um, so the idea is to, when we add some new symbol, for example, K electric, when we submit it, now, as the method is post, the form method is post, this should be sent to the slash companies URL. And in Node.js, we are handling slash companies using the post method using this route. And we are just like displaying the request body in console. So as soon as we submit this button, you see that the data in the it's submitted in the form is displayed here, right? So as we have not ended the response, so here we are not like the session is not ended. So we but the main thing is that we received the data which was submitted through the form, right? Now, if this thing is in JSON form, it would be very simple for us to added to the companies object. So we just say that companies, it's an array dot push and request dot the body, right? So request dot body contains this thing. So we add it to the array that we already have, and we can respond with something like that response dot write and response dot right? So in this case, send a post request using this form, right? It should be received by the server and added to the company's array, right? So we submit it, we get the message company added. We have added the data received from the post form in the company's array. And if we open the URL, you see that the company that we had added is now returned in the companies, right? So it is added to the companies list. But of course, as we have added it in the companies variable, and this variable would only be functional or available if the server is running, right? So if we just stop the server and run it again, then the scale electric would be gone because we did not save it in the JSON file, right? In companies.json. So what we can do is that once we write add the company to this array, we can write this whole array into the public slash companies.json file. So for that, we use fs dot write file function, right? So within this function, we give the path names, which is public slash companies.json. So and we give the data. So data is in companies. So we need to convert companies to a string. So we just call JSON.stringify, pass it the companies object. So this would write the data, right? So and if there is an error, it can be handled. So now the server has received it. Now let's restart the server. Right, let's look if companies.json has that data. Now company.json has the scale active which we have added through the form.